Today, we're diving into a judicial scandal that honestly sounds like it was ripped straight from a movie script. It all kicks off with this mysterious fire at a VIP home late one night, and it ends up creating a massive, unprecedented crisis for the highest court in the land. Mahatma Gandhi is on fire. Now, those were the actual words shouted by a firefighter. And no, he wasn't talking about some priceless historical artifact. He was talking about what he saw right there under his own feet in all the smoke and chaos, a discovery that would end up shaking the Indian judiciary to its absolute core. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's late, around 11:30 at night on March 14th, 2025. An emergency call comes in reporting a fire at 30 Tuglock Crescent in New Delhi. Now, this isn't just any old address. This is the official government residence of a sitting Delhi High Court judge, Justice Yashwant Verma. So fire crews get to the scene, they're battling this blaze, and they have to break into a locked storeroom. Inside, it is total chaos. You've got bottles of alcohol literally exploding from the heat. But as the smoke starts to clear a little, one of the firefighters feels something kind of strange under his boots. He looks down, and he can't believe what he's seeing. Piles and piles of half-burnt bundles of cash, 500 rupee notes just everywhere. And look, we're not talking about a little bit of pocket money here. The initial estimate of the cash they found in that one room was a staggering 15 crore rupees. That's well over $1.5 million US. So right away, the big question is, how on earth did this much cash end up in a judge's storeroom? So you'd think with all these firefighters and police officers on the scene, documenting everything with photos and videos, the story would be pretty straightforward, right? Well, wrong. Almost immediately, the story starts getting really complicated. Instead of getting clear answers, this whole web of contradictions starts to form, creating this central mystery that somebody was going to have to untangle. And right off the bat, you have this direct clash of stories. On one side, you have more than a dozen independent witnesses. We're talking firefighters and cops who all saw the exact same thing, a pile of burnt cash about 1.5 feet high, and they had video to prove it. But then, on the other side, you have the judge's private secretary, a guy named Rajinder Karki, telling them right there on the scene that the room only had household items and nope, absolutely no cash. And this really gets us to the heart of the conflict. Justice Verma, who was actually away on vacation at the time, comes out and says the storeroom was always unlocked, that staff could get to it, and that someone must be trying to frame him. But the Delhi police commissioner basically says, hold on a minute. This house is in one of the most secure VIP zones in the entire country. An outsider couldn't just wander in and plant crores of rupees. It almost had to be an insider. And just when you think this whole thing couldn't possibly get any weirder, it does. Despite everything his own men said, despite all the photos and the videos, the chief of the Delhi Fire Service goes public with an official statement saying his firefighters found no cash. This was a jaw-dropping contradiction that sent shockwaves everywhere and started raising some really serious questions about a potential cover-up. So at this point, this thing just explodes. It's way past being a simple police matter now. The news shoots straight to the top, landing on the desks of the Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court and then the Chief Justice of India himself. I mean, the integrity of the entire judiciary was suddenly on the line, so they really had no choice but to launch their own internal investigation. The first instinct was, damage control. The Supreme Court decided to just transfer Justice Verma back to his original court in Allahabad. But wow, did that backfire. The Allahabad Bar Association was furious. They wrote this letter basically saying they were not a dustbin for controversial judges. This very public smackdown forced the Supreme Court to stop and take a much, much harder look at what was going on. So a special high-level committee of 3 judges was put together, and they were given a crystal clear mission. They needed to find answers to 3 really basic questions. First, why was this mountain of cash in a judge's house in the first place? Second, where did it all come from? And third, who cleaned out that storeroom and removed all the evidence in the hours right after the fire? And these guys did not mess around. They moved fast. Over the next month, that committee held 10 formal meetings. They went through everything, call records, videos, photos, and most importantly, they interviewed 55 different witnesses, from the first firefighters who walked into that room all the way up to Justice Verma himself. All right, so now we get to the moment of truth. After weeks of this super intense investigation, the committee delivered its findings. And let me tell you, their report was nothing short of explosive. It just systematically took apart the whole story that the judge and his staff had been telling. Really, the whole investigation came down to one simple question. Who do you believe? And the committee made a very clear choice. They said, look, on one hand, we have over 10 independent fire and police officers whose stories are all consistent and totally credible. On the other hand, we have the judge's staff, many of whom have worked for him for years and are obviously incredibly loyal. They decided to trust the outsiders. And then the committee really zeroed in on that private secretary, Rajinder Karki. They basically proved he was lying about his involvement. There was video evidence that put him at the scene, call records showed he had a long phone call with Justice Verma right after the fire was put out, and CRPF guards testified that they saw him with their own eyes personally overseeing the staff as they cleaned out that storeroom the next day. So, the committee's final verdict was just crystal clear. Was Cash actually in the storeroom? An unequivocal yes. Was the storeroom part of his official residence? Yes, it was. And most importantly, was Justice Verma's story credible? The committee said no. They found it super suspicious that he never even bothered to check the damage himself, and that the CCTV footage from that night just conveniently went missing. So based on all of this evidence, the committee came to one single, devastating conclusion. They wrote that Justice Verma's misconduct was, and I'm quoting here, so serious that the only appropriate action was for him to be removed from his position as a high court judge. Now, you would think, okay, case closed, right? That's the end of the story. But nope, not even close. The Chief Justice of India formally asked Justice Verma to either resign or take voluntary retirement. And Justice Verma refused. He said that doing so would be like admitting he was guilty. And that set the stage for a major constitutional crisis. And here's why it's a standoff. See, you can't just fire a high court judge. The process is designed to be incredibly difficult. It's this long political process called impeachment, and it's a total gauntlet. You need a motion supported by a ton of MPs, then another investigation, and then you need a special 2/3 majority vote in both houses of parliament. It's a political nightmare that has almost never been successfully done in India's history. And so that brings us to where we are today, a stalemate. Justice Verma has been transferred to the Allahabad High Court, but he isn't being given any cases. He is, for all intents and purposes, a judge in name only. He's drawing a salary, but he's not doing any judicial work. His entire career is just stuck in the state of permanent limbo. This whole insane affair really boils down to one fundamental and very tricky question that gets to the very heart of judicial accountability. And that is, in a situation like this, where does the burden of proof really lie? Think about it. Should it be on the judge to explain how millions of dollars in cash mysteriously appeared in his government-owned house? Or does the government have to go one step further and prove that this specific money was the direct result of a specific bribe? The answer to that question isn't just about the fate of one judge. It's about the future of accountability for the entire Indian judiciary.